My dad and mom arrived at my house, they said with a smirk, still playing grown up, huh? This place looks like a joke just like you. I laughed quietly, went upstairs, came back down holding something that made them instantly pale. It's taken me 3 years to work up the nerve to write this. I guess some stories don't leave you, no matter how much you try to scrub them out of your memory. I was never the favorite. And if I was, they did a hell of a job hiding it. My name's Mara, and I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm 34 now, but I can still remember exactly how the carpet in our living room smelled like mildew after storms, or how my dad's recliner had a permanent body-shaped dent from the hours he sat silently watching the news, beer in hand, judging everyone, including me. My mom, Felice, was the kind of woman who smiled sweetly in front of strangers and said the most cutting things once the door shut behind them. She'd hand me a glass of juice and say, "You're going to need to lose that baby fat if you ever want to be taken seriously." That was when I was 12. My younger brother, Devin, on the other hand, could do no wrong. He failed classes, snuck out, wrecked my dad's car, and still somehow ended up with all the praise. He's just a boy, they'd say. He'll grow out of it. He never did. When I graduated from Carnegie Mellon with a degree in architecture, I paid for every cent myself. Scholarships, loans, part-time work. No help from home. Not even a card on graduation day. Meanwhile, Devin got bailed out twice by them in college for things I still don't know the full story about. Somehow, he graduated anyway. Barely. I moved to Philadelphia after college. Started at the bottom in an old architectural firm. Paid my dues. Designed lobbies and bathrooms before anyone let me touch a building plan. Slowly, I climbed. I worked double shifts, took every course I could, entered competitions on the side. Eventually, I started my own tiny firm. Just me and a friend from school at first. Then it grew. And finally, last year, I bought my first home. Not a mansion, but a lovely 2-story fixer-upper in Fishtown. Brick exterior, ivy crawling up the side, creaky wooden floors and crown molding that needed work. I poured myself into it, every nail, every paint stroke, every tile was mine. My little kingdom. And then, they showed up. It was late spring, unannounced of course, just like always. I opened the door and there they were, my parents, standing on my porch like they'd just stopped by out of politeness. My mother wore that tight smile she always used when she wanted to look impressed but wasn't. "Oh," she said, stepping inside without asking. "So this is it? Still playing grown up, huh? This place looks like a joke." My dad followed her in, scoffing under his breath. "Just like you," he muttered, looking around like the place offended him. I stood there for a moment, frozen in that old, familiar shame that had sat like a coat around my shoulders for decades. I hadn't seen them in over 2 years. They hadn't come to my firm's ribbon-cutting ceremony. Didn't call on birthdays. But here they were, in my house, reducing it all with a glance. I laughed quietly. It slipped out before I could stop it. Something cold and amused and tired all at once. I turned to them, nodded, and said, "Give me 1 minute." Then I walked upstairs. My office was in the back, on the 2nd floor. I opened the cabinet, reached in, and pulled out the folder. Thick, heavy. I could feel the pressure of the papers inside. I walked back down the stairs slowly. My heels echoed on the wood. They were standing in the living room now, near the window, Mom running her fingers across the curtain hem like she was inspecting for dust. When I walked in, they looked up. I held out the folder without a word. "What's this?" my father asked, instantly suspicious. "Go on," I said. "Open it." My mom took it and flipped it open. There, right on top, was the power of attorney they had signed 5 years ago when they asked me to manage their estate planning because, as they put it, "You're the only one with a brain in this family." Below that were the revised documents I had legally filed last year, stripping that power and shifting every financial and medical decision into the hands of an independent fiduciary, one they didn't know. And under that were the signed revocation letters and a printed copy of the email where I told Devon, not them, that I was removing myself from all involvement in their future. Their faces paled. I didn't have to explain it. I could see it click in their minds. You can't just, my dad started. I did, I replied. 6 months ago. My mother looked at me, fury bubbling behind her eyes. We trusted you. No, you used me, I said calmly. But not anymore. The rest of that day blurred into fragments. They left soon after. My mom slammed the folder shut and pushed it into my chest like it burned her. My dad muttered something under his breath about ungrateful children. I stood on the porch as they walked to their car. No tears. No shouting. Just stillness. When the car pulled away, I finally closed the door and sat down on the stairs, folder in hand, heart pounding. It wasn't just about the documents. It was about finally being free. In the weeks that followed, I got a few emails from Devon. He asked why I'd abandoned the family, why I didn't want to be part of the plan. I didn't answer. There was no plan, there never was. Only obligations I never agreed to. What none of them knew was that my parents were in financial trouble. I had seen the signs years ago, mortgages layered on top of each other, credit cards in my mother's name with suspicious charges. They had gambled their security on the assumption that one day, I'd step in and save the family. They never imagined I'd walk away instead. But I had. And I was never going back. 2 months later, I hosted my housewarming party. Friends came, coworkers, neighbors. People who actually saw me. Appreciated me. Not a single blood relative in sight. We sat in the backyard with string lights overhead, eating takeout from the taco truck I hired, and drinking cheap wine from mason jars. Someone put on music. Someone brought cake. At one point, a friend raised a glass and said, "To Mara, for building everything with her own 2 hands." And for the first time in my life, I believed them. My parents have always had a way of belittling me, sometimes subtle, sometimes right to my face. They arrived uninvited to my home recently, looked around, and said, "Still playing grown up, huh? This place looks like a joke. Just like you." I didn't say much. I just smiled and went upstairs. When I came back down holding a thick file folder, they went completely silent. Pale. Ashen. They left soon after and haven't spoken to me since. I'm wondering if it's even worth unpacking with them anymore, or if walking away for good is the healthiest thing. I was never the golden child. That title was handed to my younger brother, Nolan, the moment he was born and never taken back, even when he gave them every reason to. I'm Mara, 34, living in Philadelphia. Born and raised in Pittsburgh. My parents, Felice and Dorian, never outright disowned me, but they've always treated me like I was some kind of temporary guest in their lives. Like I'd eventually return to the background once Nolan took his rightful place in the spotlight. Growing up, I was the kid who followed every rule, got good grades, helped around the house without being asked. I was also the kid who got forgotten at school pickups, told I was too sensitive, or that I didn't smile enough when extended family came over. Nolan, on the other hand, failed half his classes, wrecked our dad's old truck at 16, and still got a standing ovation for finding himself. I went to Carnegie Mellon on scholarships and student loans, never asked them for a cent. I worked part-time throughout college, graduated with honors in architecture, and hustled my way through a few grueling years at a firm in Center City. Eventually, I launched my own small firm with a former colleague. It was hard. It was draining. But it was mine. I bought my first home a year ago, a 2-story red brick house in Fishtown with a tiny backyard and creaky wood floors. I'd poured months into restoring it. Scraped paint. Retiled a bathroom. Learned how to install kitchen cabinets via YouTube tutorials. My friends helped. My crew from the firm helped. My parents didn't even ask for the address until after I moved in. Then, out of nowhere, they showed up. It was a gray Saturday morning. I was still in sweatpants, nursing a cup of coffee and scrolling through job bids when the doorbell rang. I peeked through the front window and saw them, Felice in one of her nice wool coats, Dorian holding his car keys like he might need to make a quick escape. I opened the door, confused more than anything. They didn't say hello. They didn't say surprise. They just walked right in. Felice did her usual visual sweep of the living room, eyes crawling over my bookshelves, my second-hand couch, the old pine coffee table I'd restored myself. She stopped in front of a potted fern and made a face. "This is what you've been doing all this time?" she asked, lightly. "Still playing grown-up, huh?" Dorian gave a short laugh, like it was a comedy routine. "This place looks like a joke," he muttered. "Just like you." It was an old script. One I used to rehearse answers to in the mirror. But that day, I didn't have to rehearse anything. I just smiled. A real smile, too, not sarcastic. Not angry. Calm. "Give me 1 minute," I said. I walked upstairs. My office is in the back corner of the second floor. Sunlight hits it best in the mornings. It still smells like new paint. Inside one of the filing cabinets I keep a folder, a thick one, about 2 inches wide, full of paperwork I'd been collecting and curating for years. Power of attorney forms. Financial records. Letters of revocation. Even notarized statements. I brought it downstairs and found them in the same place, my dad now standing near the window, arms crossed. My mom pretending to dust a photo frame with her gloved finger. I handed the folder to my mom without saying anything. She opened it and the blood drained from her face by the second page. There was a time, not too long ago, when they asked me to take over some of their affairs. Estate documents. Managing their healthcare power of attorney. "Nolan wasn't ready," they'd said. "You're the responsible one." I didn't say no back then. I thought maybe they were changing. That this meant something. But I'd seen the pattern for what it was: use me for the hard things, praise him for the easy ones. Last year, I removed myself from everything. Paid the legal fees to appoint a third-party fiduciary. Sent certified letters. They ignored them, I guess. Or assumed I'd change my mind. Now, the truth sat in their hands. "You gave this up?" Felice asked, her voice brittle. "You just washed your hands of us?" I met her eyes. "You never really let me have a place to begin with." She closed the folder and shoved it back at me like it was diseased. "We trusted you." I shrugged. "I think you trusted me to clean up your messes." "That's not the same." Neither of them spoke after that. Dorian grabbed the car keys again, jaw clenched, and walked toward the door. Felice followed, stiff, quiet. They didn't look back when they got into their car. I watched them drive off. Then I stood alone in the hallway for a few minutes, holding that folder to my chest, unsure if I was supposed to feel relieved or ruined. I didn't cry. Not then. Not later. What I felt was something different. Like I'd finally stopped auditioning for a role I never wanted. I stood in the hallway for a long time after the door shut. I kept waiting to feel something bigger, relief, maybe. Or finality. Instead, it was just quiet. Not the kind of quiet you notice. The kind that creeps in unnoticed and settles, like dust. I went back upstairs and slid the folder into its usual spot in my filing cabinet. Locked it. Sat at my desk, stared at my inbox. I had a client consult in 30 minutes, but I couldn't focus. Not yet. It's strange. When you spend most of your life trying to be seen, trying to prove that you're not a disappointment, you imagine that when the moment comes, it'll be cinematic. Loud. Triumphant. Instead, it was just an old folder, a short walk down the stairs, and the look on their faces when they realized I'd chosen myself, not them. I didn't tell anyone right away. I didn't even text my best friend. I just got on with my day. Sent some emails. Ate dinner standing in the kitchen. Fell asleep on the couch half watching a documentary. It wasn't until the next morning that I got the text from Nolan. Nolan, Mom said you embarrassed them. What the hell did you do? I stared at the message for a full minute. No hello. No how are you. Just instant defense. That's how it always went. He was their built-in emergency response system. A siren in a hoodie and sneakers. I didn't respond. I muted the thread and slid my phone under a pillow. By Monday morning, the emails started. One from my mother. Subject line, unbelievable. One from Dorian. Subject line, let's talk. I deleted them both. It's not that I didn't care. I just didn't owe them any more of my peace. The house felt different that week. I started noticing how comfortable I felt inside it, finally. There were no more echoes of their judgments bouncing off the walls. No more waiting for some imaginary version of them to walk in and say, actually, we're proud of you. That voice was gone now. Muted. I focused on the things I could control. Installed the new shelves in my hallway closet. Finally ordered the vintage chandelier I'd been eyeing for the dining room. Spent a full Saturday sanding and refinishing the banister. Projects helped. They always had. Midweek, I ran into my neighbor, Danny, while dragging my trash cans out to the curb. She waved from her side of the fence. Hey, your folks okay? I saw them leave here last weekend and, well, didn't look like a happy visit. I gave a half shrug. Yeah, they were, just passing through. Danny nodded, the kind of nod that said I've got nosy questions, but I respect you enough not to ask. Good to see you, though, she said. You look lighter. That stuck with me. You look lighter. Because I did feel lighter. But freedom has a strange aftertaste, especially when it comes with the price of burning bridges you once prayed would hold your weight. Later that week, a letter came in the mail. A real letter. Handwritten. From my mom. It was folded neatly in 3 parts, no return address, just my name written in that tight, looping script she always used when writing grocery lists or checks. It wasn't long. Just a few lines. Mara, we didn't raise you to be cruel. We just wanted what was best, for you, for all of us. I don't know what you think you're proving by turning your back on your family, but I hope it makes you feel strong. I hope, one day, you'll come back down to earth and realize we were only trying to help you grow. Felice, no love. No mom. Just Felice. I read it once. Then again. Then I folded it back up, slid it into a drawer, and placed my grandmother's old stone paperweight on top of it. Not to keep it safe. Just to keep it from blowing away. It was the kind of letter you read when you need a reminder of why you left in the first place. The next weekend, I hosted a small dinner for some friends, my found family. It wasn't planned as a housewarming party, but it became one in its own way. We drank wine on the porch. Ate too much cheese. One of my coworkers brought fresh-cut flowers from her community garden. Another friend made a lemon tart from scratch. People laughed. They complimented the place. The shelves. The art. The old floors. And in the midst of it all, I felt something I hadn't in years, peace. Not the fleeting kind. Not the kind that cracks when the phone buzzes or someone brings up your family. Real peace. The kind you build brick by brick when no one's watching. The dinner that night ended sometime after midnight. A few friends stayed back to help wash dishes. The wine bottles were half empty on the counter, candles flickering low, soft music humming from the speaker. I stood in the kitchen, towel in hand, looking around at the life I had built, piece by piece, without them. This was my real homecoming. And they hadn't even been invited. That weekend was the last time I thought about my parents in any tender way. About a month later, I got a voicemail. Hey, it's Nolan. Listen, I know things got weird. But Mom and Dad need help. He paused. They're underwater on the house. Dad's retirement stuff didn't pan out. Mom's medical bills are piling up. They were hoping you might. I don't know. Talk to someone? You still have connections, right? I replayed the voicemail twice. Not once did he ask how I was doing. Not once did he acknowledge what happened. It was just the same script, recycled. They stumble, I catch them. I pay. I fix. But that person didn't exist anymore. So I didn't reply. Instead, I did something else. Over the years, I had become more than just an architect. I'd made a name for myself locally, designing small commercial spaces, historical rehabs, some eco-housing projects, even a few modest multi-unit residential builds. And because I had always documented my work carefully, posted about the process, and supported young architects in the community, my reputation had weight. One day, I got wind that a local nonprofit was struggling to get a building permit for a transitional housing project, an adaptive reuse effort on an old community center. The city had slowed them down with red tape and zoning pushback. I knew the game. And I knew who was involved. Including a certain senior planner who had worked closely with my father before he left city zoning to go work for a private firm. I reached out. Volunteered pro bono design time. Showed up to the city council meeting with full documentation, renderings, and a prepared presentation. I cited every delay, backed with policy language. I knew my stuff. The room got quiet when I stood to speak. Some recognized my name. A few remembered my father. The project got fast-tracked 2 weeks later. That wasn't revenge. That was replacing my family's legacy with something better. Something mine. Weeks passed. Then months. I got one last letter, typed, signed, from a law office. My parents were attempting to reassign my name on certain financial documents. Ones I had long since removed myself from legally. It was a desperate, clumsy effort to pull me back in. I sent my lawyer everything. She responded with a cease and desist, along with proof of revocation and legal boundaries they'd ignored. I didn't even have to say a word. I never heard from them again. On the 1-year anniversary of the day they showed up uninvited, I hosted a small open house event with my firm. I invited past clients, collaborators, even students I'd mentored. We celebrated not just the firm's success but the new community library project we'd recently secured funding for, a space I had quietly donated $15,000 toward, in honor of my grandmother, who taught me how to read on the porch swing of a house they sold without telling me. The librarian asked me if I wanted a plaque. I said no. Instead, I had a small phrase engraved on a stone bench outside the library: "Some roots are better when replanted." Sometimes people ask me if I miss them. My parents, my brother, the family that never really was. I don't. What I do miss is the idea of them, the version I invented just to survive. But I've stopped feeding that illusion. I don't need their approval. I don't need their presence. I don't need to fix what was never mine to fix. I have my home. My name. My work. And now, when I walk through my own front door and hang up my keys, there's no lingering shame. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I was the one they called a joke, and I'm the one they'll never measure up to.